If you've been paying attention to college football this offseason, there is one narrative that keeps floating around the SEC. It's that Shane Beamer and South Carolina football are next up. I'm going to save my opinion on that for another video, but to spoil it a little bit, I think they're a little bit overrated. I think a lot of it will depend on how the transfers do, but more specifically, how their transfer quarterback will do. The Gamecocks have not had good quarterback play in quite some time, it seems. Back in the day, Steven Garcia led the team, and then you had guys like Connor Shaw, and eventually Jake Bentley. Ryan Helinski was a bust, Luke Doty was a bust, Brandon McElwain was a bust, and Lorenzo Nunez was a bust, so the Gamecocks have desperately been looking for a good quarterback. Some say they are one good quarterback away from really having that program on the uptick, and others think they're extremely overrated. As I said, a lot of that is going to hinge on the success of their transfer quarterback, and we all know who that is, Spencer Rattler. In today's video, I want to talk about how Spencer Rattler fits at South Carolina, what we can expect from him, and if he will be a boom or a bust type player there. So, without further ado, let's just get started. So before we talk about how he fits at South Carolina, we need to talk about who he is. Rattler was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, and obviously signed to play with Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. After backing up Jalen Hurts in 2019, Rattler would beat out Tanner Mordecai for the starting job, and would have a pretty good year. He did struggle at first, but he eventually got it together, and finished with over 3,000 yards passing, with 28 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. That's why there was a ton of hype for both Oklahoma and Spencer Rattler's draft stock, as he was projected to go number 1 overall, and some thought Oklahoma could win the 2021 national championship. Unfortunately, that's not what would happen. Rattler would struggle in week 1 against Tulane, and it would reach a climax against West Virginia. Near halftime, the Oklahoma student section started booing him, and they wanted Caleb Williams to play. They got their wish against Texas, as after they were down early, Caleb Williams came in and led them to one of the most memorable finishes of the 2021 season. From there, Rattler was history. He did play a little bit against Baylor, but the writing was on the wall, and it was time for him to leave. He entered the portal, and some thought he would maybe go to LSU, some thought maybe he could rejoin Lincoln Riley at USC, and others really had no clue. He eventually chose South Carolina, and while I was taken aback at first, it makes a whole lot of sense. He's going to play for a big-time SEC program. They had quarterback struggles, and he would reunite with his former coach Shane Beamer. In case you didn't know, Beamer was a great recruiter and a great offensive coach at Oklahoma before he took the South Carolina job. So last year the Gamecocks ended up going 7-6 as they won their bowl game against North Carolina. I'll be honest and say that they didn't really pass the eye test, but they had a couple of games where they played really well. In particular, they played really well against Auburn and Florida. Unfortunately, the quarterback play was mediocre at best. Luke Doty was a highly rated player coming out of high school, but in his first 2 years, he really hasn't been that great. Jason Brown transferred up a level, and while he was decent, he saw the writing on the wall and transferred to Virginia Tech. The last guy was Zeb Nolan. Before the season started, he was holding the clipboard as a coach, but they put him in, and while he did throw for 7 touchdowns, he ended up getting benched. For that very reason, South Carolina really relied on their run game, as both Kevin Harris and Zaquandre White had quietly good seasons and are both entering the 2022 NFL Draft. So this is where Rattler comes into play. So first I want to start out with a great quote between Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator, and Rattler. Satterfield called him up and said to Rattler, quote, "Dude, people think you suck. You know what? People think I suck too. I've got a chip on my shoulder and I can't imagine how big the chip on your shoulder is. Let's use that." That was his plea for Rattler to pick the Gamecocks, and he eventually did over Arizona State, Nebraska, Ole Miss, Pitt, and UCLA. Rattler said, quote, "A lot of guys don't get another chance to start over where they're really wanted. I was just really happy to get away from a toxic situation and get somewhere new. Anywhere was going to be better. I found the right place." So apparently there have been some reports that Lincoln Riley's exit was very toxic, and I can definitely guess at times that Rattler's last year was toxic, but now he'll have a fresh start in some place that really wants him there. South Carolina desperately needs one of those star players to bring attention back to the program, as they've really kind of lacked one since Jadeveon Clowney. They've unfortunately become one of the more forgettable SEC teams, and Rattler brings instant hype. Every Rattler video I make on YouTube does well, so that means there's a lot of eyes focused on him, and that means South Carolina's going to have a lot of viewership this season. 1, there's that. 2, he's already brought in some players. Austin Stogner was a teammate of his at Oklahoma and one of the top young tight ends in the nation. He chose to head down to South Carolina, and so did a plethora of other transfers. Obviously, Rattler is pretty good. He was a preseason Heisman favorite, was supposed to go number 1 overall, and won many games at Oklahoma. While he didn't quite live up to the Oklahoma standard this year, he has the arm, the intangibles, the experience, and the attitude to win big football games. But the one thing I am worried about is both the schedule and the actual roster itself. he doesn't really have a lot of weapons to throw the ball to in my eyes. Yes, their top receiver in Josh Fan returns, but outside of that, they need a couple of guys to step up in a big way. Rattler recently told the Greenville News that he thinks that the receiving core is very deep, but in terms of returning production and blue chip talent, it really isn't. Yes, Van will be returning and Stogner's a great option, but everything else is a huge what if right now. According to South Carolina insiders, senior Xavier Leggett has stepped up, former cornerback turned receiver DeCarrion Joyner has stepped up, and the big one that could change everything is transfer Antoine Wells, who came from James Madison, and apparently he has looked really good. Rattler had this to say after the spring game: "We're really deep in our skill positions, so that makes my job a lot easier. Just get the ball in their hands and they'll make plays." You guys saw some of that tonight. Rattler also added this when talking about the receiving room: "There's at least 2 consistent guys on the field at all times. There are times when we'll have 4 consistent guys on the field, and one of them is a big tight end. We also have running backs who can catch." I am a little bit worried about the running back room, as I said earlier, both Zaquandre White and Kevin Harris have left for the NFL, so while they will return Marshawn Lloyd, they are going to need people to step up. That's my biggest complaint about the South Carolina hype, is that there are so many question marks to fill, and as I'll get to later, the schedule doesn't give them a lot of time to figure out. So at this point, we know Spencer is confident in his team, and he's confident in his new school, but how is that going to translate to next year? Well, when you take a look at their schedule, they have it very difficult. When you take a look at their road games, it's not easy. They have to go on the road to Arkansas, who is much improved. They're going to go on the road to Kentucky, who in my eyes is the second best team in the SEC East, and they also have to go on the road to Florida and their rival Clemson. I can't see them winning more than 1 or 2 of those games max, and there's a chance they could lose all 4 of them. When you take a look at their home slate, it's also pretty difficult. They get Georgia and Texas A&M at home, both of which are going to be ranked inside the top 10. Then from there you get Missouri and Tennessee, which in my eyes are pretty much at the same level as them. They have 3 guaranteed wins in Georgia State, Charlotte, and South Carolina State, and Vanderbilt shouldn't be a problem, so at minimum this team wins 4 games, and I think they're going to have to steal a couple to have a big year. And that, combining with the receiving core, is why I'm a little bit concerned about the Rattler hype. Yes, there is potential for these weapons to step up, but nothing is really proven, and they won't have a lot of time to figure it out, as they have a very difficult schedule. As of right now, if I had to put my money on it, I would say Rattler's going to have a good year, but I would sell my stock on South Carolina as a whole for now. 2023 could be a huge year for Beamer, but this team is not experienced enough to win a lot of games with this schedule. But what do you guys think? If you're a South Carolina fan, feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Give me your prediction for the team and some storylines I should follow. Also, let me know how you guys think Rattler will do next year, and give me a topic I can take a look at in my next video. Before you go, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until